to my channel. My name is Ida and this is going to be my last video of the year. So this is going to be a favorites video of 2024. I have a long list to go through because 2024 was an amazing reading year for me. So let's just get started. So these books are going to be 5-star reads and a few of them are also going to be 4 or 4.5-star reads. And it's simply because some of them really stood out to me and they are books that I still think about even though I didn't rate them 5 stars. The very first book I gave 5 stars this year was Funny Feelings by Tarah Dewitt. And this is a romance book with a comedy plotline and a friends to lovers plotline as well. This book deals with a few heavier topics, but also has a big focus on mental health. And it's especially the male character of this book who is very big on therapy and stuff like that. And we love to see that. That was amazing to see in a male lead. I don't think I'm gonna say too much about these books because I'm actually not very good at explaining books, but I will just say that I really enjoyed these characters. It was my first Tarah Dewitt book. It made me curious to pick up the rest of her books, which I've done, and I've rated one of the others 5 stars as well. I'll talk about that later. But highly recommend this one, especially if you like mature male characters, you like a focus on mental health, and you like humor but also depth to your character, then this is definitely the one for you. The second book was The Invocations by Krystal Sutherland, the stunner. I read her book House of Hollow the year before and I still think about it to this day, so I was so interested in this one when it was released in the beginning of the year. This is a YA horror, body horror I would say, female rage kind of book, also a little witchy. It has everything. One of the things I really liked about this book was the dedication, and it just says for all the angry girls, which I love. And then it also had this trigger warning of a few different things. I would definitely say check the trigger warnings just because it is body horror. I'm just gonna share one of them with you though, because I think it's the first time I've ever seen this as a trigger warning for a book. But it says cannibalism, but then in parentheses it says mild. You're like, what is mild cannibalism? And I have a friend who said that it's when she bites the skin off around her nails, and that really made me crack up. I feel like that is mild cannibalism, yes. When you read this book, it will make sense. Krystal Sutherland writes amazing YA horror books. Highly recommend them. The next two I'm going to talk about at the same time because it's by the same author that I also discovered this year, and that is Out on a Limb and Next to You by Bonam-Young. It's a unexpected pregnancy and also a friends to lovers. And the characters in this book are just so real and so likable. And the relationship that they build up from being friends to being like co-parents and eventually a couple is just so beautiful. I absolutely loved it. I also loved the friends that were surrounding this couple. They were just really nice people all the way through. Highly recommend this one. And then Next to You might be one of my favorite romance books of this year. Like, I mean, just from the cover itself, I feel like, I don't know, this speaks volumes. I love it. We have a bisexual main character with pink hair and tattoos. Like, I love that. And then we have our male character who is maybe one of the biggest softies I've ever read about, and I enjoyed every single piece of it. So he's like a very grounded character, and our main character, she's a little chaotic and very anxious. And I definitely relate to that, so it was just such a joy. It's also friends to lovers, this one. And there's also a road trip and redoing a school bus. And the pining in this one, and the love notes, and the family dynamics, especially in Matt's family, were just so beautiful. I actually cried right reading this. It was just stunning, and it had me giggling and kicking my feet and crying and just everything. Like, if you're gonna read one of the romance books from this pile of books I'm gonna talk about, let it be this one. It's so good. Okay, then I just said that, and then of course we have Funny Story by Emly Henry. So like, maybe also read this one. Maybe just read all of them, you know? As you can see, I really enjoyed this one as well. I annotated it a lot. And as always, such clever writing and clever, funny banter and dialogue. And the characters feel like actual people. And Emly Henry just has this certain type of book that she writes, and she does it again and again, and it hits equally hard every single time. I adore them, and I think Like when you read her books, you can really tell how smart she is. I'm not saying smart in like only the intellectual way, but also in like her way of understanding people and dynamics and motivation and fears and stuff like that. I just think she has a very deep understanding of humans, and you can tell that throughout her stories. So of course an Emly Henry book was going to be on this list. Another obvious one was Adrienne Jimenez, Just for the Summer, which I also loved so much. This is my new favorite Adrienne Jimenez book. This one dives a lot into mental health, but especially parental mental health and like neglect from your family. It has stepping up for a parent, but also stepping up to a parent. Oh my God, what baby is this? Sorry, there's just a picture of a baby in this book. I don't have a baby, it's not a baby I know. What is happening? Okay, I think what it is I lent this to my sister and maybe she used it as a bookmark. I don't know, I'm not gonna show that. That just gave me a fright. Just really related to some of the things in this book and I found it beautiful. I will definitely reread this at one point. I know all of these books are just romance books. I will say most of them are. There's gonna be a few YA books as well, and fantasy, but mostly romance. And that is of course Business Casual by B.K. Borison. This is the final book in the Love Light series, which I talked about in my last video. And this one follows Nova, who is Beckett's youngest sister. So Beckett is in the second book. And also Stella from book one's brother, Charlie. And it's a black cat golden retriever couple. And Charlie is just like so happy-go-lucky and he's just like a great guy overall. And then Nova is a tattoo artist and she's a little more reserved, and I really enjoyed this dynamic and also found it so cool that she had her own tattoo studio. Loved revisiting this small town and seeing all our previous love interests together again in the book. It felt so special. Then I have a book that's very different from the rest and I don't even know what genre this is. That is The Love Story by Meg Shaffer. She's also the author behind The Wishing Game, which was one of my favorite books last year as well, so I kind of had a feeling I was gonna love this one. This one is like loosely inspired by Narnia. It is a fairy tale, but it's a fairy tale for adults as well, and it has this very magical setting. I don't even know what to say about this one because like I can't say too much without spoiling it, but I will say that I cried during certain parts of this book, and it's also a LGBTQ+ book. I will say that. So yeah, like a queer, Narnia-inspired fairy tale for adults. I don't know what else could make you sold in this book. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. And then we have a book that I talked about in my October TBR, I believe, and that is Don't Let the Forest In by C.J. Drews. This book took me like 1 or 2 weeks to actually review because I had no idea how to feel after I finished it. It's a dark YA horror fantasy, I think I would say, about these two boys who are very codependent. They're each fighting their own demons, but also fighting actual demons together. If you don't like endings where it's not very obvious what just happened or like what's gonna happen, then it might not be for you. But if you like books where you get very furious at the end in like a good way, and you like those books that kind of crawl under your skin and just sticks with you for a while, this is definitely the book. It's a lot darker than what I anticipated, but in the best way possible. I would definitely recommend it for the autumn months as well, just because it is such a dark and creepy book and it just fits that vibe perfectly. Also, the back of this book is just absolutely stunning. I have a few other books, but I don't have the physical copies of these right now, either because they were library books or books that I've lended out to other people. But one of them was Blue Sisters by Coco Melors. This one was a surprise because it was the first book by her. I know that Cleopatra and Frankenstein was really popular last year, maybe also the year before. But I started out with Blue Sisters and I'm really glad I read them that way around. Blue Sisters was a 5-star read and I kind of knew that from the very first paragraph. It was just so beautiful, and having a sister myself, it hit really hard. If you have sisters, and it doesn't really matter if you're close with them or not, I feel like this book will hit very hard for you. The relationships between these 4 sisters was just so beautifully described, and the characters were so well-rounded and flawed, but you could understand their actions and their decisions even though they were very different, and even if they were very different from you as well. So I think she did an amazing job at creating these characters and making you feel their hardship. This one also made me cry. Like, I don't know, I guess if books make me cry, they automatically become 5-star reads or something. I don't know. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. I also read another book by Tarah Dewitt called Savor It, and it took place in Oregon. And this was a small town near the coast. The setting was great, the characters were great, and the romance was such a slow burn. And again, like from Funny Feelings, I knew that she was really good at creating chemistry between the characters and making you root for them. And this one was no exception. Then we have a book that's a little different from the rest, and that is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. I read this one during the summer, but I feel like autumn would have been the perfect time as well. I also do think this one took place in Oregon, maybe? It's more so a magical realism, and it's an adult sort of fantasy book, I would say, where there is a crime that has been committed years past, and you are starting to unravel this crime and these stories between these characters who haven't seen each other in a while, and you just keep getting like these small pieces of the story, but you don't get the entire picture, and you're kind of like solving the mystery along with the main character. And it was just so moody, and it took me straight to this island outside of Oregon's coast. You could almost feel the fog in the air, and like how wet and mossy and foggy the forest was. It was just so atmospheric. And I think Adrienne Young does a great job at writing books like that. Then I have a YA fantasy / YA horror book called Our Crooked Saints by Melissa Albert. It was my first Melissa Albert book, and I enjoyed it so much. I am actually very surprised that I haven't seen anyone else talk about it, because I thought it was amazing. It was witchy, it was dark, it was mysterious, and it also had a little bit of a crime plotline, which I enjoyed a lot. Like, you were also discovering all these secrets together with the main character, and it was just so wicked and so cruel, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely also a book I would recommend for autumn. I also read that one in summer, but even though it was smoking hot outside, I had goosebumps from this book. That's how good it was. And again, like, if a YA book can do that, I think that means they're really well written. And then the final two books are Christmas books, actually, and I think this is one of the first time Christmas books have made it to my 5-star rating, because normally they just fall a little bit short. Like, there's a certain vibe you're looking for, a certain atmosphere you want to get from your Christmas books, and not all of them hit the mark, but these two, they did. The first one was Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. I knew I was going to give it 5 stars, maybe a couple of pages in. I started reading this one while I was at a temple stay in South Korea, and we were sleeping in these like small rooms, and the walls were paper thin, and you had to be quiet after a certain hour, and it was just like you were there to relax and stuff like that. And I started this book after the lights had been turned off, and I was trying so hard not to crack up while reading it under my blankets. It was hilarious. I think I laughed on like the second page, and I just kept on laughing, and the other person who was in the room with me, she kept looking over to me, and she was like, what is happening? And I had to like whisper. It's just really funny. Like, this book is so funny. I think this is the most I've ever laughed while reading a book. That's how funny it was. And the love story was just amazing too. When I wrote my review for this book, I think I said something about like, if I had just 1% as much chemistry as the main characters had with each other with the lamppost, I would marry it on the spot. Like, oh, it was sizzling, and their dialogue was so funny, so clever. They were just perfect for each other. I cannot recommend this enough. I think it might be my favorite Christmas book of all time now. So funny, so good. I'm like, I can feel myself blushing just thinking about it. Loved it. And then the final book of the year, the one I'm still currently reading, I am planning on finishing it today or tomorrow. So tomorrow is New Year's. I'm halfway through, but after I think 2 chapters, I caught myself laughing and smiling, and I just knew right then, okay, this is going to be a 5-star read. I just know it. And that is The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Alyssa Carter, I think her name is. This one you've probably seen all around all like book communities, because it's sort of the Christmas book this year. And sometimes the overhyped books, they tend to disappoint you, but I would say this one does not. It's so quick, it's so fast paced, it's funny. The main male character has such golden retriever energy, and he's ridiculous, but at the same time hilarious, and just like a great love interest, I think. Female character is so likable as well, and I can't say too much because I haven't finished it yet, but it's funny and it's very fast paced. I'm reading it on my Kindle, and some of the chapters says like you have 1 minute left in this chapter. They're like from 1 minute to I think 10 minutes long, which makes it such a quick read. So if you want to just read one more book, or like just one more Christmas book, let it be this one. Those were all my favorite books. Then I have a few honorable mentions, and that's just because they were actually books that I first read the year before, so in 2023, but then I reread them this year. And if you haven't reread your favorite books or series yet, this is your sign to do so, because I can assure you, you're gonna love the books just as much the second time around, maybe also the third time around. So these I'm not even gonna say too much about, I'm just gonna say that they were, again, 5-star reads. So I reread When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. They're both 5 stars again. I love these books to bits and pieces, especially this one. Like, I think this is my most annotated book of all time. And this is just the tabs. I've also annotated with a pen, and I annotated even more the second time around. This is the series where the 3rd book is coming out in like a week, and I am so excited. I have a feeling it's gonna be 5 stars again. I also reread Happy Place by Emly Henry. This is my favorite Emly Henry book, and it hit just as hard the second time. I still love these characters to bits. I love the setting in Maine. I mean, I will let the tabs speak for themselves. Absolutely adore this book. And then this I've talked about before. I don't know, no matter what video I do, I somehow end up talking about The Raven Title. But this will be the last time I talk about it this year. I reread these for the 3rd time. They were all 5 stars again. I have no words. I wanted to talk about my disappointments of the year, but now that I think about it, I feel like this video is just so positive that I don't want to bring it down. But I did have a few disappointments throughout the year. Maybe I'm gonna do like a bigger video where I talk about like some of the most hyped books that I've read that I was disappointed in. I think I'm gonna do that instead, because this video is like too upbeat now. I'm too happy after talking about my favorite books of the year. So we're gonna wait with that. We're gonna wait for like a moody, rainy day, and knowing Danish weather, it's not gonna take long. So I will have that up sometime in the new year. But yeah, I hope you've had an amazing reading year as well. For me, I think this might have been one of the best years so far. I also somehow ended up reading 137 books. I did not try to do this. I will say I never set reading goals for myself on Goodreads or like any other platform, because to me, reading is a hobby and I just don't want to make it into something I feel stressed about. But I think there were just so many books I wanted to read this year, and I just had this whole lineup of books ready to go, so I didn't have to wait around for books. And I would definitely say getting a Kindle has helped with this. You can get books with one click. So it's both a curse and a gift, I would say. I also read a lot of graphic novels this year and a lot of middle grade, so that might have something to do with how high the number turned out at the end. But that's still impressive that I had so many books that I rated so highly. There are also a bunch of others I didn't even add. I didn't add any graphic novels, although a lot of them were 4 or 5 star reads as well, and that's just because I want to do a graphic novel video at a later time. So when you look at it, I think it was a great reading year for me, and I am hoping 2025 is going to be just as great. From my last video, I know I have a lot of books to look forward to. So yeah, I would love to know what has been some of your favorite reads of this year. And other than that, I just want to wish you a happy new year, and I will see you in 2025. Bye!